Welcome to the Interprofessional Space podcast, where the spirit of inquiry meets healthcare collaboration. In our podcast, we discuss all things interprofessional education. According to the World Health Organization, interprofessional education is when students from at least two healthcare professions learn about, from, and with each other to improve health outcomes and enable effective collaboration. Welcome back to Interprofessional Space. In this second episode with Dr. Joseph Zorek, we explore how visual storytelling enhances healthcare education and look at two powerful case studies from his book.
So I kind of want to go back, I guess, take us a little bit back around creating the book. And I think a lot of us are familiar with written case studies and how you put all that stuff together and how you create that. And how is this different for you, though, to create the illustrations? And then you obviously had the written stuff around it to support it. But what was that like in creating it? What was the process like? You had a lot of collaborators, and you had to get people on board with this way of doing it. Was it hard? What was it like?
It was, that's a great question. It was very different than writing just a written case study, than developing a written case study. We sort of drew upon concepts that maybe are more familiar to advertisers or marketers, like we did, or just filmmakers. We created storyboards, and a lot of this was guided by George Foles. I think I mentioned him earlier as my primary partner on this endeavor. No, but we essentially we knew what we wanted to create at the time. This is going back to 2018. We did not know how to create it. And so from 2018 to now, our process has changed dramatically because we've kind of figured out what's the best way to capture the essence of a story. We've just figured out how to tell a story. And then beyond just like, how do you tell a compelling story? It's like, we had to create an entire process to figure out how are we going to differentiate a pharmacist visually, differentiate a pharmacist from a nurse, from a physician, from PA, OT, PT, dentistry. I mean, we had to come up with our own catalog of colors that we only use for pharmacy, for nursing. And so, it's quite complicated, but essentially it starts with what we're, Anne, earlier in the conversation, you talked about like pulling on people's heartstrings. Mm-hmm. We're not always trying to like make people cry or, like that kind of thing. But we are trying to connect with readers. And so whenever I pull a team together to create a new one of these, the first conversations we have are like, what is the essence of what you're trying to say? When somebody reads this, what kind of feelings are you trying to evoke? What kind of lessons, what are the messages that you're wanting readers to take away when they're done with the whole case? And so it's really kind of identifying the essence of what's the message and what are the feelings we're trying to evoke. And from there, we kind of work backwards to create a story that could get us to that delivery point or that punchline. And so it varies from case to case, but we create a written storyboard. We work with the teams to say, let's distill this whole story into 2 or 3 paragraphs. What are you trying to say? And from there, we say, okay, what kind of characters do we need in the story? So we create a character list. After that, going back to how we did the cases for the book, each of these cases in the book was just 6 illustrations in length. What we're doing now, like we're finishing a case that's, 6 illustrations is like 1 page of art. We're working on a case right now. It's actually with Cody Wenther and a faculty member at UT Austin named Kirk Evoy and George and I. for a special issue. We're hoping it'll get accepted for a special issue in a clinical pharmacy journal focused on opioids. But that story is 4 pages of art. So like there's been this evolution. We've realized, hey, you can't really get to the heartstring moment in 6 images. That's a really, really tall order. You need to kind of hook people and get them invested, and that takes some time and some space. But back in the early time when we were putting the book together, it was just 6 illustrations. And so we had an overall summary of the story, we had a character list, and then we had a written description of what we thought we wanted to capture in each illustration. And then George Foles worked his magic to sort of translate our written ideas into something that visually captured what we were trying to do.
So
it's and I'm
that's okay.
I'm laughing about this because it's hard to even describe, because there's no real recipe. Like we certainly tell a story that has an arc. You know, there's a beginning, there's a problem that's introduced, there's a climax, and there's a resolution. That's the kind of story arc that we've been telling. But how to get from the starting line to the finish line, oftentimes it's a meandering road that we have to walk down.
So I appreciate that you kind of compared original series of images from the book to what you're doing now. And I'm pretty sure that I read in one of the articles about using student feedback as you've moved forward. And am I right in recalling that expanding the images, providing more images and longer stories, is that part of what you received from student feedback?
Yeah, 100%. When I moved to UT Health San Antonio, I came here, and my kind of the goals for me shifted. So I was sort of moving a little bit from working inside of a single school to advance IPE within a single school, to overseeing the creation of IPE for an entire university. And, 5 schools, dozens of programs. And what we were looking for when I first got here was a way that we could capture students' attention and get them engaged. And so I had shared with faculty, administrators, deans, some of the work we had done for the book. And we just basically all said, yeah, let's experiment with this. And so we created a 6 illustration case, and then we piloted it with a student group. And the students were like, yeah, we love this, but like, it's so short. Like if you got 6 images, you don't have enough real estate to, I think you all will appreciate in IPE, it's really important that every single student who's part of an IPE activity can see themselves and that it's relevant to them. If you bring in like pharmacy students to an IPE activity that has no connection to the practice of pharmacy, you've lost them. It's so, they were telling us like, this is really cool, it's engaging, but our partners in occupational therapy were like, where are we? We don't see ourselves. We can see how cool it is. And so essentially that was the nudge for us. And I think some of that was circumstantial because our health science center is big. And so we wanted to be able to include everybody. So in order to accomplish that, we were going to need to expand the length of these stories and the complexity of these stories. And that was really, so the nudge really is a credit to the students. And for us, honestly, piloting everything that we do, before we roll anything out university-wide, we run pretty robust student pilots, because we've learned I would say I have learned the hard way. This goes back to my days at Wisconsin, that like nothing's ready for prime time until a robust sample of students has piloted your ideas, because like oftentimes faculty have the best of intentions and the best of ideas that do not land with students. And so kind of centering this storytelling approach in the mode of like, we're trying to connect with these students, we're trying to move these students. The only way for us to do that is to pilot before we launch. And we have piloted stories, gotten great feedback from students. We've changed the stories. We've said like, hey, that didn't work. What we thought was going to land never landed. So yeah, it's a real credit to the students, and we lean on their wisdom to help ultimately shape what we put in front of them.
I think as IPE educators and facilitators, I'm gonna take a big leap, Susie, and assume that you and I both have had experiences where we tried something and it just did not go well. So that's just part of being an educator, right? But I think, the idea of piloting, I think it also, for me, helps reduce the anxiety and the stress of, if you've piloted something and you've seen some success and had the ability to make some adjustments, then I'm more confident rolling something out to a bigger group. So that whole process just makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, and our numbers are so large on our campus. Like we actually created a brand new case that we're going to be publishing inside of a book that's being developed by faculty of medicine and social work faculty at the University of Chicago. And so we created a brand new case for our first university-wide IPE activity. And that activity this past fall had 1,271 students who were a part of it. And so, we have to pilot these things before we roll them out in such large numbers, because, if you're doing something with 100, 200 students, that's one thing. You get over 1,000 and you've really missed the mark on something, you're going to hear about it. Mm-hmm. And students aren't super kind in their feedback.
Well,
yeah. No, and I think it does help too. I know from my experience, if you start a session, you're like, we created this, it's co-created with students, with your peers. We have done this year before you, and then they almost seem a little bit more receptive to it too. And saying, oh, okay, so it's been vetted. So we don't have to maybe be so harsh with you. So we're going to talk around some individual case studies that we particularly liked as well, just from our own background. So my background is in public health. So I was particularly drawn to a case study called Unsung Heroes that you have. And that's kind of around the idea that sort of patterns of medication use across the community can serve as an epidemiologic flag. So that can, spark things and then inform kind of public health concerns and, outside of healthcare, even like into the community. So can you tell us a little bit about where that case study came from and what the concept was behind that?
Yes, I believe that was co-authored with Tricia Sace-Ragnola. Am I remembering correctly? This is years ago.
I'm impressed. Absolutely.
Yeah, Tricia has, I believe, a public health background and a real passion for global health. And we wanted to include I wanted to include a public health chapter in this book because pharmacists, you could see this then, during COVID, the overlay of like the role of pharmacists in public health initiatives is like, it's incredible. And it's underestimated what pharmacists do in, for example, like we just think about COVID, you think about the rollout of the vaccination campaigns around the world. A lot of that work was done through pharmacy, through the profession of pharmacy. And it's not unheard of. We have another case in the book. I don't remember which chapter this was in, but it might be in the same chapter, or maybe it was in our infectious diseases chapter. But we had a meningitis B outbreak on a college campus, where then physicians, pharmacists, nurses, others worked together to sort of roll out a rapid response immunization drive on a campus, drawn from like real life stories, inspired by real life stories. But the unsung hero case, that one, I love that case because it was, at the time when we were creating it, I think this idea of like social determinants of health, upstream issues that seem to have no connection to health outcomes are actually as or more important for improving patients' health than we previously had realized. And so again, it's a credit to Tricia for wanting to tell a story like this. And we just kind of, going back to like, how do we create these things? We landed on like, what's the essence? What are we trying to capture here? And you hit the nail on the head, Susie. It was like using medication use patterns as an epidemiological signal. And so if you don't have, and in that case, it was patients in a community wiping out the stores of antihistamines at a community pharmacy. And it was like a clever, insightful, problem-solving community pharmacist who noticed this pattern and then started to work with their local government representatives to sort of raise red flags at town halls and try and figure out what's going on, ultimately in our story leading to the identification of unsafe housing for a large group of residents in a community. Gosh, I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I love the complexity of that case, and I'm glad you chose it.
Yeah, I guess I would say too, what it brought to light was a nice reminder that I think we always think about nurses and the lovely connection they have with patients, but the community pharmacists see people all the time. A lot of times the first point of contact, first person somebody's going to go to, you're the first one that's going to pick up stuff that's kind of going on maybe within the community, something like that would not even be noticed, in any other area. So it was really nice reminder, how connected pharmacists really are with the community and with people. And it really is such a connector. I think sometimes what the stereotype around pharmacists being kind of like, oh, they're kind of brainy and shy and closed off and they're not, great at being with people. Those stereotypes that just they're just not accurate. Especially, so.
No, and we use that was sort of a hidden agenda of mine with the book, was to blow up those stereotypes. That was very intentional. And the profession is that's a very antiquated perspective on this like rich, robust profession. And so the goal was to blow that up. And it sounds like it did that for you too. So, that's a small sample, but I'll take it as a win.
So the case study that I wanted to talk about, background in med-surg and home health nursing, is called A Hidden Crisis, and it's the trajectory of healthcare needs for people who have cognitive decline, initially living in the community, the impact that has on their families, I literally, I'm reading it, nodding, going, yes, yes, and that.
Mhm.
So it really resonated on so many levels for me. One thing that jumped out at me was I noticed you included dental health in this case study, and I wondered, was that a strategic goal that you had? It's so important, first of all, and I think also an underappreciated profession, and we just don't think of that, right? Oral health and how important that is to overall health. So was that a specific strategic goal with this case study?
Yeah, absolutely. We have an incredible school of dentistry at UT Health. Top rated in our state for many years, top rated school of dentistry in the nation. And we have dental students and dental hygiene students who participate in our IP activities. And we built that particular case for a university-wide telehealth simulation that we run. And so like last year when we ran it, we had a little bit more than 1,100 students participate. And so we put them into small teams, and then they interact via telehealth in a telehealth environment with a trained actor playing the role of the caregiver from a hidden crisis. So the students read a hidden crisis prior. We also give them some like electronic medical record documentation, a little bit like maybe a physician note, a nurse's triage note, and then they read the case and they're preparing for kind of this unknown visit. And then we train these actors to push the students' buttons and kind of force communication in a bit of a tense environment. And so that's a very highly rated IP activity that we run for our students. And a lot of the credit for that goes to a physician named Sadie Velasquez, who's been a real strong partner of mine over the years at UT Health. And so Sadie wanted to focus on this in this area. And so we built a team just like we've done for the other cases. This team was a little bit larger because we had representation from all of these different schools. But again, the essence was we wanted to highlight for that particular story. Obviously, we wanted to show the complexities of like if somebody has a progressive illness like dementia, what kind of impact does that have on the patient, on the family? But we really wanted to highlight the incredible stress that primary caregivers feel and experience when they're essentially charged with the health and well-being and safety of oftentimes a parent who has a diagnosis like this. And so, suicidal ideation, something that caught our eye when we were doing our research was these incredibly high rates of suicidal ideation of family members who are caregiving for parents with dementia. And that was the essence. And we wanted to get to that point, and we wanted to make sure that readers left the story understanding like how hard this is. And so we worked backwards from that kind of punchline to weave in why we have to have interprofessional teamwork in this kind of setting. So I think we did that very well. But to your question about dentistry and oral health, it's so frequently ignored, but for patients with cognitive impairment or advanced dementia, it's incredibly important. And so we only were able to work in a little, almost like a cameo of a dentist. And I wish we could have been a little bit more robust demonstrating that in the case, but we had limited space for that particular one. I will say for the chapter that's our newest, that's for the book chapter that houses our newest case, that one is really focused on oral health. And so anybody who wants to get a little bit more on the oral health angle of things, please let me know, and I'm happy to share that case with folks. It's in press right now.
it just occurs to me, Susie, that this book, for individuals who are looking to start IPE, you could take this book and make it live. I mean, that you just talked about doing that. What a brilliant, simple, evidence-based, fantastic way to begin IPE is to use these as inspiration for in-person activities that you do with students. It's brilliant. It's a great book.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we I don't know if we captured this on camera, but we were talking about the dedication to the McGraw-Hill book, and how my son was not included in the dedication. And so I was saying at the time, well, we have another book that's kind of in, we're calling it an educational resource. It's going to be multimodal, but one of the delivery points is going to be a book. I'm not sure if this will make it into the podcast or not, but we just executed an agreement between UT Health and Ohio State University. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with Andrea Peifel, who's immediate past president of the National Academies of Practice. She's currently I believe, an associate vice president for IPE at Ohio State. Sort of my counterpart at Ohio State. We've actually come together formally through this agreement to build this new educational resource, and we're going to be recruiting. It's going to be a partnership with the National Academies of Practice, and we're going to be recruiting over the next, let's say, 6 months, fellows in the National Academies of Practice to contribute to the resource. And so what we're going to do is we're likely going to create, if we think about it in the structure of a book, 15 or 16 chapters, one for each academy that makes up the national academies. So there will be a pharmacy, medicine, public health, nursing, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And what we're going to do is we're going to recruit faculty from UT Health, faculty from Ohio State, and then faculty from outside of our institutions who are fellows in NAP. One, maybe two, to join each chapter to create 15 new illustrated cases. And then we're going to compile them into this new book. And so the McGraw-Hill book that we had talked about earlier, that was really focused on pharmacy. This book will be focused on everyone, at least everyone represented in the national academies. And it's going to be our audience is going to be pretty broad again, but learners, clinicians, administrators, and policymakers. And so the written components of each of those chapters will touch upon the positive impact of interprofessional teamwork in those domains, applicable to those domains.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about it. I haven't been this excited about a project in years. I mean, probably since the book. You ever have those moments in your career where a light bulb goes off, or something is happening where you're I'm living my best life right now, and it's not going to last. It's not always going to be like this, but I feel like I've entered that kind of phase with this partnership and the scale of this project, and the potential impact of it for years down the line.
Will your son be in the dedication for that book?
I believe he's going to make the dedication.
All right, that's good.
He'll have to. Otherwise, I'll have to pay for that later.
Right. All right. So, Joe, we could just keep talking all day, but that's not going to happen. So we usually wrap up with questions that we've adapted from a show called Inside the Actor Studio, and they're called the Pivot Questions, and we've sort of used some of them and adapted some of them. So, are you ready?
I'm ready. Yeah. Make sure the viewers know that this is 100% improv.
Right. Love it. Love it. This is the real Joe. So what is one thing about your own healthcare profession that you wish other healthcare team members knew?
Oh gosh, I feel like we've talked a lot about that
Yep.
to date, but I would just reiterate that pharmacy is so much more complex than the general population knows.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, pharmacists are so highly trained to impact care and to help others achieve their goals, whether they're physicians or nurses or public health professionals or dentists or whomever, physical
Mm-hmm.
therapists. I just think I'd love for people to walk away from this with a good sense of like, man, I need to learn a little bit more about that profession because it's dynamic and it's really poised for impact. I mean, when I think a lot about the role, the predicted demise of everything from the introduction of AI into any field. But within IPE and for pharmacy in particular, pharmacists are not just trained to have knowledge about drugs. They're also highly trained to engage with other clinicians, to connect and understand patients, and these kind of traditional quote unquote soft skills. But this kind of skill development, this human understanding human nature in order to positively affect change, that's a really rich part of all PharmD accredited programs. And so pharmacists are not, Susie, as you had mentioned, some of that stereotypical stuff. Modern pharmacists do not fit that bill. And I think the education and training of pharmacists is really positioning this profession for continued impact, even through the predicted disruptions of AI on healthcare.
Thanks. So my question's a little bit sillier. So do you have a favorite medical word? And what is it?
Oh gosh, that's a good one. The only word that's popping into my head right now is pharmacokinetics. I don't know. You could put the prefix pharmaco essentially onto like everything. But pharmacoeconomics, pharmacodynamics, pharmacogenomics. I can't think off the top of my head of anything more creative than that. But no, I love the way I've always been fascinated by the way drugs exert their impact on the body, and just simply how they move in the body. Like, and so yeah, I'm gonna go with pharmacokinetics.
I like that. That's a good one.
What is a profession other than your own that you would like to attempt?
Oh wow. I have had a very diverse career path, uncommon career path, for sure. I sort of, I'm really passionate about foreign language and multicultural understanding kind of things, world politics. When I came out of undergrad, I did a Fulbright scholarship in Germany, where I taught English and American studies, and I'm still like practicing my German on Duolingo. That's kind of like a family activity, where we're all learning different languages but competing with one another. So I don't know. I mean, I think, and when I made the pivot from teaching high school, and it was high school social studies, my background earlier was in psych, sociology, and world history. When I made the pivot to healthcare, at that same point in time, I was seriously considering becoming a sociologist. And so I actually had a standing offer with a professor I worked with as an undergrad to enter the PhD program. And I just, for whatever reasons, chose pharmacy and healthcare. But I will say, I think I was drawn to interprofessional practice and interprofessional education because of the complex social dynamics. And so I kind of feel like I'm living my best life right now. But if I could pick a brand new profession, it would certainly be sociology.
Is there a profession that you would not choose? You're like, no way would I ever do like.
Oh, that's another tough question. I'm gonna for this, there are, but I'm gonna keep them to myself because I don't want to offend anybody.
Okay.
What is a sound or a noise that you love?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. I would say right now, the sound that I love the most is, and this hopefully doesn't come across as cliche, but it's laughter.
Your son?
It's
Give
my
him some
son's.
credit.
I would say it's my son's laughter right now. We, he also has this interest in comics right now, where we have like the anthology of Calvin and Hobbes comic strips, these huge thick books that he is reading right now with my wife. It's sort of like this like bonding thing that they're doing at night before bed, where he's learning to read, so he's reading these things, and his intonation on, like, he's like living inside of this comic strip in the way that he's reading it, and then bursting into laughter. To me, it would be laughter. Like, we've lived through, since we moved to San Antonio. We moved here several months later, COVID happened. Oh my gosh, just hard times, and I feel like it's taken this long to kind of get back to a place where life doesn't feel as dark or heavy, at least within our home. And so, I think just the laughter of that kid and the lightness, that sound is really bringing a ton of joy to my life right now.
So that wraps up our questions, and that wraps up our discussion with Dr. Joseph Zorek. Thanks so much for being with us today, Joe. It's been such a pleasure. I'm inspired again.
An amazing conversation. Really appreciate it. I appreciate like your time and everything.
Yeah, well, it's been an honor to be invited and to be here with you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
We'll be sure to put links in the show notes for the resources that we talked about today. Before we sign off, though, we want to remind you, whether you are a student, a practitioner, or an educator, the work that you do is important and can be very stressful, but you are not alone. Please take care of yourself. Let's look out for each other, and we hope you can join us again soon. Those who follow us know we like to ask our guests about books. While we didn't have time for this during our recording, Dr. Zorich shared that his favorite book is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. He reads it nearly every year, even in German, and finds deep personal meaning in its message about life's journey. He describes it as a hopeful, powerful story that always brings him back to the importance of growth and finding meaning along the way. It's a book he highly recommends to everyone. Like what you heard? Like, subscribe, and join us next time as we keep exploring what it means to collaborate better across professions, across systems, across the board.